What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the NBA Hardwood Show here on the Run Pure Sports YouTube channel. We're talking today's 9-8 game NBA slate. Warriors, Utah postponed due to a coach's death. So we got an 8-game slate to talk about on this Wednesday afternoon. We got the usual crew. I'm Draft Cheat, of course, joined today as usual by Mangone. Looking very dapper today. We'll get the backstory behind esteemed real estate mogul Travis Mangone and AP, who looks just like his normal self today. So a lot of news to discuss: injury news, trades, postponed games, another crazy day in the association, which we're used to. If you've been playing DFS for any amount of time, you're used to the chaos. You thrive on the chaos, and we'll try to get the picks to you to thrive tonight in DFS. We'll leave Mangone on the back burner for just a moment. We'll go to AP first. How you doing on this Wednesday afternoon?
Doing really, really well. It seems like this week is flying by, and in no time it will be the weekend. We'll have NFL. Really excited for the games this weekend. It's going to be a fun slate. 4 great games to watch, obviously too. It's hard to focus right now. I'm over here looking at Mangone. I mean, this is going to be a battle to get through. It's, I got my realtor right across from me is going to be selling me on plays all day. You love to see it. But I like this slate. I think it's really interesting. We've had some big trade news. So the Toronto situation is going to be an interesting discussion today. And then there's a few matchups that I think are really nice, especially for DFS. So I think it's going to be a good slate. Excited to break it down with you guys.
Absolutely. We'll go over to Mangone. It sounds like you were wearing this outfit yesterday. I can tell from the chat comments. I wasn't sure. I saw the tweet about it, which obviously I had the best response to what you do for a living. No surprise there. But yeah, I missed the show yesterday. You're bringing it back. Did you have a good day in the NBA streets, Mangone? Is this like a good luck thing where, if you're stringing together good days, you got to come with the suit, or what's going on? What's the backstory here?
And NBA wasn't bad yesterday. It seemed like the people enjoyed it, so we'll bring it back. I did it because remember the Friday show, DC, right? The Friday show, I think you were on it, and Holden was tilting about the realtor in the chat, right? And all of a sudden, I was like, I'm doing a show with Holden today, right? Because he said he's jumping on. I said, what could tilt Holden more than dressing up as a realtor and acting like one the entire show? So that was the backstory, basically to piss Holden off, DC, which I think you can easily approve of. Am I not wrong?
You are not wrong about that. Yeah, pissing Holden off is a favorite pastime of mine. So I totally get it, and I enjoy it. I enjoy the suit, the look. I don't think I even own a suit quite that nice, to be honest, Mangone. So
it took a couple fits and tries to get the right fit, because some of the shirts I have don't fit properly and everything. So it was a little bit of a mess to try and get it done. It was a good show yesterday too. I did tell the people, Rubio Dimes, our very own, said Russell Westbrook best play of the day, and I said, Rubio, if you play Russell Westbrook, you will need a second mortgage, and Rubio needs a second mortgage today, so he is in trouble. It was a good show. I think overall gave some good takes, and we're gonna bring some good ones again.
What did Russ Westbrook end up doing yesterday? Did he do anything?
He played 22 minutes, 11 points, 4 assists, and 2 rebounds.
Back to the normal.
Yeah, he had this claim that it was going to go small ball, and I said, "There's no chance. There's no chance they're going back to small ball." I have watched this Clippers team and lost a lot of money on them to win the finals over the past 3 years, and I could not agree with him on that one. So,
I do got to give a shout out to Rubio, because I did slide in the DMs yesterday. I got some help with Saber. It was my first day, quote unquote, running the Sims. I actually had to click the upgrade button, running the contest Sims. He took me through how to do all that. I jumped in the late showdown and had a very good night. Won a $2,500 Millie Maker ticket to NBA. So good first night running the Sims for me. I do got to give a shout out to Rubio. Wouldn't have been there without him. And of course, with the great product that Saber Sim brings to the table. Enough chit chat. We got to get to these games. There are 8 of them to talk about after the Jazz Golden State Warriors postponement. Just one game tipping off at 7 Eastern time. It is the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Detroit Pistons. Total sitting at 222 in this one. Big news, or I guess potential big news, Anthony Edwards, questionable to play. He rarely misses games, so I think the default expectation should be that he will be in there. But obviously, this is the first game of the night. We will know either way whether or not he's going to play. Cade Cunningham remains out for another couple games for Detroit, and Detroit also did acquire Mike Muscala and Danilo Gallinari. They are expected, I think, to be in the rotation tonight. Knowing Detroit, who knows? Maybe they'll get 30 minutes of run. Pretty hard to predict that rotation outside of guys like Cunningham and Jalen Duren. So we'll see what Detroit does. Let's kick it off with UAP, Minnesota, Detroit. What do you see here? Minnesota favored by 12, 222 total.
Yeah, so this first game, we'll likely, we'll definitely get the Ant news, so that would be nice. And I'm with you. He doesn't typically miss games, but it is very, very impactful. Obviously, if Ant is out, we want to take a look and wait for the starting lineup here, but it's just usage to go around. From a matchup standpoint, I love power forwards against this Pistons team. I mean, really, they're just bad defensively against most teams. One of the worst, teams, obviously, in the league. But against power forwards specifically, they've given up some big numbers. Keegan Murray had that almost 50-piece a few games ago. It was Kyle Kuzma had a big game as well. Lauri Markkanen, Pascal Siakam. I mean, if you just go and you look at strictly matchups, that power forward, Jabari Smith, a big game, 42 DK points. It really sets up well for Karl-Anthony Towns. Towns also mispriced here, in my opinion, at 7-7. Just feels a little too cheap. You have positional, the power forward center spot, positional flexibility, the word I was looking for with him too. So Karl-Anthony Towns, really the guy that I have a lot of interest here. With the Wolves double-digit favorites, I mean, I wanted to look at Naz Reid, but I think it's a little too thin on this slate. He's priced way up. We're so used to these reserve players like being somewhat of at a discount, but DK has been pretty sharp, especially with Naz Reid's price. 5-6, probably too much. But again, if Edwards is out, I want to wait to see what the starting lineup looks like. They could do quite a bit with it. I think it would make things interesting. And then on the Detroit side, they have some help now. They have Gallinari and Muscala to help them out a little bit. I don't think that's going to do too much, but I think the Pistons side is a full fade for me. The Wolves continue. I think they have the top-rated defensive rating in the league. Very, very good defensively. Not a team I want to target, especially with a bad Pistons team. So the Pistons side, an easy cross-off, easy fade for me.
Yeah, makes sense. A lot of people talking about Mangone, what he looks like, what he does for a living over there. I do got to say, AP, I think I've seen this on Twitter too. You are a dead ringer for Vikings head coach Kevin O'Connell. I'm
gonna do it. I'm gonna get the outfit, the hat, and the hoodie that he wears. I'm gonna do it one of these shows. I'll get on the Amazon and I'll get that ordered. I think that would be a good bit.
Yeah, Halloween. You can go as Kevin O'Connell. That'd be perfect. Mangone, let's go to you. Timberwolves and Detroit Pistons.
Yeah, that's a good shout, by the way. But this is an interesting game. Obviously, a big game, right? Anthony Edwards, he is questionable. Huge piece of news because if he does not play, how do we not play Karl-Anthony Towns at 7-7, right? He would be one of the better plays on the slate. The guard situation, listen, I'm not racing to play Mike Conley, even if Ant's out. I'm still not racing to do it. Could he get there? Sure, and is he fine? Yeah, but I'm still not racing to do it. I definitely want to say that. I do think some of these other guards could pop up, like a Nickeil Alexander-Walker. One of these other guards could really gain a lot of usage and just are too cheap that I think you'd want to consider them as a value. And then, of course, Rudy Gobert, even at 7-1, I think he would get some good opportunity. And Kyle Anderson at 4-3, he might get a little bit more ball handling too. So I think that there's a lot of different ways you can go with these Timberwolves if Ant is out. But I'm assuming Ant plays. He typically always plays. The Pistons side of the ball, it's really tough because we like Jalen Duren, but is this a matchup to like Jalen Duren? No, not at all. 7-3. Sure, if it was 7-3 against the Charlotte Hornets, yes, or the San Antonio Spurs, but 7-3 against Rudy Gobert and the Timberwolves just doesn't make a lot of sense. Also, you get worried about the blowout against a team like the Timberwolves. There's just a lot of factors that I don't love with this team. And obviously Isaiah Stewart is back as well. And some of these guys are priced up, right? Like Killian Hayes was 4-5. Now he's 5-6. Even at 4-5, he struggled to get the value at times. So I think the Pistons are a pretty easy stay away. And then I do think that this Timberwolves team, we're going to want to buy some of these Timberwolves options, but it just depends if Ant is in and out, right? That's going to be a key component to this slate. Good news. We'll get that probably when we're on the show in about like 35 minutes.
Yeah, we'll get that news in plenty of time. I will say this about the Wolves. They've done a really, really good job of taking care of business when they should, when they're big favorites on the year. It's just a focused team in general. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Minnesota wipe the floor with Detroit and run away with this game. A blowout seems somewhat likely to me, given what how the differential between these two teams and the Wolves' propensity to take care of business. So keep that in mind. I wouldn't go too heavy on the Wolves, even if Edwards misses. Just my opinion there. Let's go to San Antonio and Boston next. 238.5 total in this one. Another game that could potentially be a blowout. Big mismatch. One of the worst teams in the league. The Spurs, one of the best in Boston. So you do see Boston favored by 16 in this one. No real news on the Spurs side of the ball. Zach Collins remains out. But on the Boston side, we do have three very important questionable pieces. Drew Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis, Derek White, all questionable to play in this game. Obviously, if 1, 2, or 3 of those guys, I don't think that's very likely, AP, but depending on who's out for Boston, it's a really good matchup here against San Antonio and potentially a spot to attack. What do you see, Boston and San Antonio Spurs?
Yeah, actually, I think the spread is a little too heavy here. Like the Spurs have been, they're bad, but they've been more competitive of late. So they played the Bucks really tight. Then the Cavs at Cleveland played them really, really tight. They got 2 wins against the lowly Pistons and the terrible Hornets, who they blew out, absolutely dismantled. And then the Bulls game, thinking back to that a couple games ago, that game was really close, and they were toe-to-toe with the Hawks too. So I feel like this team is starting to play a little bit better. Wemby played 27 minutes last game, checked back into that fourth quarter. Actually, the most intriguing thing here was his second half rotation. Wemby played a lot in that second half. Like you're really surprised to kind of see it. You wonder if that leash is coming off a little bit. If you're if you're speculating and a risk taker, I don't mind Wemby here taking a shot at him. The price is down relative to where it was. Maybe the minutes going up a little bit, 8,700 for what he does on a per minute basis. I think is incredibly fair. Just understand the risk associated with playing him. It's they're massive dogs here. The matchup's not great, but the other side too is if Boston decides to sit a few players, this game could become really, really interesting. So what? We got Drew Holiday, Porzingis, and Derek White all questionable. So yeah, if a few pieces here sit, I do think this game becomes a little bit more intriguing. Either way, though, if Wemby gives us 27, 28 minutes potentially, I have some interest. They got absolutely embarrassed in San Antonio. This was like 3 weeks ago, maybe, by the same Boston team. I think they come in. I think they put up a fight. I like what I've seen. And with that in mind, I do think someone like Victor Wembanyama is interesting. The other guy, too, if you believe the rotation, Jeremy Shohan played a lot in this last game. Obviously, it does feel like chasing, especially in this matchup. But if you're a believer in that they're trying to get him more minutes, a better rotation, you could go there. And the other thing, too, is, and he comes off the bench, but if you think the Spurs can keep it close, Keldon Johnson has this weird ability. He was horrible last game. I think he was I don't have the exact stats in front of me, but I think he was 1 for 11 or something like that. When you go back and look, when he has a really, really, really bad shooting performance, he usually bounces back in the next game. It's kind of an interesting trend to at least that I found. I don't think I'll get there, but if you're playing large field tournaments, Keldon Johnson at 6'4", keep in mind he comes off the bench. But if you believe the Spurs keep it close, has to be due to a combination of Wemby playing great, putting up the numbers that he needs to, and then Keldon coming off the bench and scoring. So I think it's an interesting tournament or a game to target in tournaments, basically.
Makes a lot of sense there. Obviously, a lot depends on that Boston news, Mangone, but talk to me. What are you doing with the Celtics and the Spurs here?
Yeah, the Boston news is important, but I do want to touch on the Wembanyama point because, listen, Greg Popovich doesn't like fun. I could imagine trying to sell him beachfront property, and that man would not want it. He doesn't take risks in life. He doesn't like fun. He's not going to play Wembanyama 27 minutes. I just feel like it was luck that happened the other day. That's my opinion on it. I just don't want to take the risk on it on this slate. That's my biggest concern. I also think we are going to get some interesting news in this Celtics game, right? And it comes from the Boston side. And I think Derek White is going to play, and I think it would be a really good spot for him. I think one of these guys are going to sit. One thing to kind of mention too, Wiley talked about this on our Discord chat, right? We got some of the guys on the committee over at DraftKings, and they talked about they're kind of tweaking the pricing a little bit to make the game a little more fun for people, I think. And they've adjusted Derek White and Drew Holiday's prices, right? Some of these mid-tier guys and studs that are adjusting down. And listen, if these guys are out, these are just definitely different prices than we've seen in the past that you'd have to like White and Holiday at 6.6K and 6.1. So I think they're definitely going to be interesting. Porzingis at 7.8. We'll see if he is in. But if those other guys are out, that could be a bump to him. It could be a bump to Tatum, Brown. Just depends who is in and out. If you are missing the guards, I should call this out. Peyton Pritchard at 4K could become a really elite value play on this slate. And as Glock mentioned in the Discord today, value is not the best. It's definitely rough. So I think Peyton Pritchard could be an elite value. But again, we need to know what the news is going to be. We could get this news while we're on air. Or if not, we'll obviously update the content. We'll be in the Discord to kind of give you that information.
Yeah, my suspicion is at least two of the Boston guys are in, maybe all three. They kind of been playing through these injuries anyway, but you never know. It is the Spurs. Maybe they think they can take a game off here and win anyway. Would be certainly a reasonable take to have. So we'll see with Boston. But I agree with you, Mangone. And in the event that White and Holiday are both out, at that point, to me, Peyton Pritchard becomes the straight-up best play.
I think even if one is out, I think he's
I'm
really
with you.
good player. Keep that in mind.
Because then he probably closes a blowout if one of them is out, because they just would need someone to facilitate the offense even at the end of the game in that scenario. So certainly news to watch in Boston versus the Spurs. Next game on the slate, a lot to talk about here, Miami and Toronto. Miami favored by 3.5 in this one, 226 total. We'll start with Miami. News there, Kevin Love and Jaime Jaquez are out for this game. They did recently get Jimmy Butler back. Lowry's going to play. Tyler Hero's going to play. Caleb Martin is going to play. So he, despite missing Jaquez and Love, a little bit healthier, honestly, than they usually are. And they'll take on the Toronto Raptors, who obviously had the OG Anunoby for Quickly and RJ Barrett trade a couple of weeks ago, and now have traded Pascal Siakam. So we've seen this team undergo significant changes. You could argue they're two best players out of town. They'll get Bruce Brown back, Jordan Nwora, and more importantly, 3 first-round picks. But it kind of seems like Toronto, punting the season to some extent. I think it does make sense for them to figure out what they have going forward. But it does present an interesting opportunity for DFS tonight, AP, because all these moving parts for the Toronto Raptors, you take a big usage guy out of the rotation and Pascal Siakam, and you have the potential to, maybe uncover some hidden gems that people won't be aware of. So I think the Toronto side is really interesting. Obviously, talk about Miami as well. Go ahead, AP.
Yeah, Toronto, obviously, massive news. Pascal Siakam getting traded to Indiana. That creates a really interesting situation. DC, this is one that we've talked about. We talked about it Monday, and it's basically the front court. What happens with the Raptors is they can go small, shifting Pascal Siakam to the 5, and that was basically one of our reasonings for being under on Jonte Porter and Thad Young. When they announced, it's funny because we talked about both fading those two guys, and then they threw the curveball and they started Porter, and I'm like, okay, that's a sign for me, and I ended up locking him. After we talked about fading him, And I would have been better to fade them because we were spot on. They both were not good. And but now it changes because there's no Siakam. And so what do? And when you look at that last game, Chris Boucher, he got the most run in the end of the third quarter and the fourth quarter, but they still closed small. I don't think they can do that, especially against Bam. And the other thing too is like Gary Trent is questionable. And so if Gary Trent was ruled out, I would expect like Jalen McDaniels, who I would like to see more of on this Raptors team. Maybe they give him more run here if you do think that they are punting. And I mean, Jalen McDaniels, he's a baller. He can get it done. But this front court rotation is what I'm trying to figure out. If they start Porter again, I think him and Thad kind of, I think they can do a few things. They just split it up between those three with Boucher, Porter, and Thad Young. Curious to see what you guys think about that. Or they take a hot hand approach. I'm not like, let's just say they start Thad Young again. I'm considering him and Porter like a very similar play. Like it's just going to be one of those things where either one of them could get the minutes. And I still think there's risk in the front court with Chris Boucher as well. The thing I like about Boucher is he has history on this team, and he hasn't been playing well, but he's a guy that can put up points in a hurt, especially in these type of situations. So I would not completely discount Chris Boucher here, but we should get a very tight rotation around Emmanuel Quickley, Dennis Schroeder, RJ Barrett, and Scotty Barnes. And it's really weird because all four, you could make the case that all four of these players, they need the ball in their hands. We started the season off with Point Scotty, and now obviously bringing in Quickley, that's changed a little bit, especially with him in the starting lineup. And then they moved Schroeder to the bench. I don't even know if we know what the starting lineup's going to be like. So there's a lot of question marks here with no Pascal Siakam. I do think it will be telling once we get the starting lineup. So we do want to wait for some news because they could do a lot with the starting lineup. And but the Raptors are going to be a source of value and a solid plays that we want to target. The question to be had is going to be how many is too many. Again, there's a lot of really nice spots on the slate, and so I don't really want more than 3 from any one team. And so that would be my answer right now. But again, we need the starting lineup. The Miami Heat side, there's a comment in chat, Jimmy Butler too cheap. Jimmy Butler was the game against the Nets went to OT. He was highly efficient, highly efficient, 8 for 12 from the field and 15 to 16 from the free throw line. I mean, that's what Jimmy Butler does. Gets to the line, but it's not like he's racking up peripheral stats right now. So I'm far more cautious on the Heat side. Like Tyler Hero, I have him as a tournament play. Bam. Maybe it's a game where Bam just dominates since the Raptors are going to be missing that front court presence. But again, I am a little bit lower on the Heat side. Far more intrigued with the Raptors side.
Yeah, Raptors side is pretty interesting. I know a lot of people are talking about the center situation for the Raptors. It makes sense to, kind of wonder about that because they're all cheap. And then you remove Pascal Siakam, a guy who can play some 5, plays most of the time at the 4. But I would be cautious with this scenario, Mangone, even with the Siakam trade. If you look at the rotations for the big men in Toronto, or the guys that are playing as big men at the center last game. So Porter started. He plays the first 8 minutes. He checks out for Thad Young, who plays the last 4 minutes of the first quarter. Then to start the second quarter, Porter and Thad Young aren't on the court. It's Chris Boucher in the center. So within the first 12 minutes and 1 second of the game, they've played 3 guys at center. None of them have played a second on the court together yet. So Boucher is in there. He checks back out for Porter. Porter plays most of the rest of the second quarter. Thad Young finishes it. Porter starts the third quarter, plays a couple seconds, gets in foul trouble. Thad Young comes in, plays most of the third quarter. He checks out for Chris Boucher, who plays 7 or 8 minutes. And then I believe none of Porter, Thad Young, and Chris Boucher even closed the game. All 3 of them were on the bench to close. It was Pascal Siakam playing the 5 to close out the game. So even with the trade, I think there's a pretty good chance that it's Porter, Thad Young, Boucher, three-headed monster at center, and they really don't split, play much for at all. I think it's Barrett, Barnes, Quickly, and Dennis Schroeder who play a ton of minutes here if this game stays close. I think they just slide. You can slide Scotty Barnes or RJ Barrett up to the 4 pretty easily in the league right now. So I like maybe the less obvious plays, the guards and the forwards for Toronto, not the center position. I'm not sure if that's a hot take or not. I haven't looked too much at ownership yet, but yeah, I think a really, really interesting game here. Go ahead, Travis.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. And a lot of projection sites, they're just not going to adjust the way that you're discussing. They're not going to be aggressive with Quickly and push him to 38 or 40 minutes, right? I'm not saying that's what he's playing, but the point I'm getting at is you're going to see these median projections and also see these you're going to see guys move over to the power forward with minutes. You could see Chris Boucher literally just mainly play center at times, right? Yes, he might get some power forward minutes, but I agree with everything that you said. The Pascal Siakam trade is big. By the way, Pascal Siakam, if you are watching and you're looking for a home in the Indiana area, I can help you out. So just feel free to hit me up, slide into my DMs. Not Bryce's fiance's, who's also a realtor in the Indiana area. Be sure to hit me up. But I do think Toronto's got great plays, but I kind of agree with what you say, DC. I want Barnes and Barrett. I want to really lean into Quickly and all these other options more. Also, Gary Trent Jr. is questionable, right? What if he misses this game? That's going to be a really big piece of news. So if he misses, that's going to be even more minutes that are funneled to these options. The Miami side of the ball, I think, is just a full fade. And then to just touch on, again, the big man situation, Porter at 4-3, Thad Young, and Boucher. If I had to pick one to play, it would probably be Boucher. And it's not because I have all the confidence in the world that Boucher's the guy. I think the confidence is the guy's just a fantasy point per minute producer, and he's the best one of the 3. And if I luck box into a bunch of minutes, then I get 30 or 40 DK points, right? He just has the ability to produce, right? So that's the reasoning behind maybe playing Boucher over those other 2 options. But that's all I got for this game. It's one where I think I'm going to like some of these expensive or more mid-tier options on the Raptors and then just fade the Miami options.
Makes total sense. We'll see what Toronto does. I think what they do for a starting lineup makes a big dent. If they start 2 of Boucher, Porter, and Thad Young, then I think I would throw my take out the window a little bit. But I don't think they'll do that. I think Dennis Schroeder or Gary Trent is in the starting lineup, depending on if Trent plays or not. Let's get to the next game on the slate. There's, I think, 4 games here in the 7:30 Eastern time window. Next one we'll talk about is Orlando and the Atlanta Hawks. Atlanta favored by 4.5 in this one, 229 total. Hawks news, nothing new. DeAndre Hunter remains out. Wesley Matthews should sit this game out. Pretty much status quo for Atlanta. And then for the Orlando Magic, still without Franz Wagner. I think he'll be back relatively soon, but he will miss this game. Gary Harris is out as well, so a little bit shorthanded are the Orlando Magic. And because of that, AP, we're seeing 2 of the highest projected players, ownership, not points, ownership players on the slate are Joe Ingles and Jonathan Isaac. And people give me a hard time about saying the pricing is too tight. If Joe Ingles is 50% owned, getting 15 minutes a game, the pricing is too tight. That's what I think. That's my take. That's been my take. It's neither here nor there. I try to avoid chalk like that when I can, but it's chalk for a reason. Talk to us about Orlando and Atlanta and what you're doing with these kind of questionable chalk pieces, in my opinion.
We always see these reserve players projected early chalk. It always it seems like it doesn't really pan out like the early projections show, unless it's certain type of players.
Well, usually some other value emerges and kind of
we saw it yesterday with a good example is yesterday with the Denver guys. I couldn't believe it. The Denver, Christian Brown and who's their power? I forget their power. Peyton Watson. Yeah, they were projected to be like 35, 40% owned. I couldn't believe it. And then they ended up being like 13 to 15% on a 3-game slate. So keep that in mind, that like what happens is I think a lot of us have that mentality where it's like, how
sounds like you're trying to talk yourself into Joe Ingles, AP.
No, I already got my notes for this. So there's a reason so Orlando is back to what I call their youth ball rotations. We'll call it a 10-man rotation where it's literally 5 starters and then your 5 bench guys come. Everyone gets a chance. Everyone gets a rotation. But it does make sense what the Magic are doing, because the likes of Caleb Houston, Chuma Okeke, are starting, but really they're not playing any more minutes than over the last 2 games. So than Joe Ingles basically has a very similar rotation to like a Chuma Okeke and Caleb Houston, at least going off the last few games. So you could almost treat it as kind of a discount off of these guys. And I believe it was Caleb. I think it was Caleb Houston who he actually had a really nice game against the Hawks. They played pretty recently, and he played 36 some minutes and had a really nice game. That's just not going to be the case though with their new rotation now with Ingles and with Isaac back. So again, I think I'm not saying I'm going to fade. Like I think Joe Ingles is going to get 21, 22 minutes potentially. And then Jonathan Isaac has been playing like 16. Whenever he's active, he's like been playing 16 to 17 minutes max. That's like what he's been doing. Now, if you go back to earlier in the season, Jonathan Isaac put up over 25 DK points in 15 minutes against this Atlanta team. And how does that happen? Well, one, they have been a phenomenal matchup for opposing power forwards. And a lot of it has to do with the pace and style that they play at, which allows that position to rack up these peripheral stats, which Jonathan Isaac is very good at for a guy not playing a lot of minutes. So again, I wouldn't totally dismiss these value plays, but always look for better value to open up. A starter, like a spot start, or like if a Gary, here's an example to what to look for. Let's just say the Raptors completely change up their starting lineup. Maybe Gary Trent's out, but maybe it's like they throw a curveball at us, and maybe it's Schroeder comes off the bench and it's a Jalen McDaniels that starts. You obviously want to play Jalen McDaniels starting as a value. What is he? 3.2K over a Joe Ingles 3.5 or Jonathan Isaac. So just be on the lookout for that. But if we don't get any news that opens up value like that, I think they're fine as full punts. I would not play them together. That's the one rule that I would make. I would not play them together. I think it's a one or the other type of situation here. But again, going back to that matchup, Paulo, you got to love his price tag. It's a 400 discount to where he was over the last 3 or 4 games. He's been 9.2K. He's 8.8. I love this matchup against the Hawks for him. Outside of that, I don't like the Orlando rotation, so I'm off of them. On the other side of this game, the Hawks fairly healthy, playing an Orlando team that doesn't play with a lot of pace. They like to not play in transition. They like to play half-court basketball, get their defense set up, and that's not what we want to target. So the Hawks are a full fade for me.
All right, a lot of talk on Orlando and Atlanta there. Let's get your take, Mangone. Magic and Hawks.
Yeah, the gift that AP posted, like I'm not reading that. That's how I feel about the Jonathan Isaac and Joe Ingles. The second I saw they were chalk, I was like, I am not even touching that. I'm not even entertaining it. I'm maxing them from the pool before I even run anything. And who knows, if that bites me, so be it. I'm
hoping, Mangone, that my newfound running the Sims isn't getting Joe Ingles and Jonathan Isaac, or else I have to go back to my hand building ways tonight.
Sometimes it does that, DC. Like the other day, Sam Merrill was in there, and I said, "Not today, Satan," and I X'd him out. So I don't know. You just got to make some tweaks sometimes. Doesn't hurt to do that. Yeah, I do agree that these guys won't have ownership if news comes in and floods. Like for instance, whatever big piece of news comes in first, everyone's gravitating towards that because we are talking about Joe Ingles and Jonathan Isaac, right? Listen, if you told me to pick one, I would pick Jonathan Isaac, if I had to, but I don't want to play these guys. I'm going to do my best to stay away. To be fair, it's the Atlanta matchup, right? I understand almost anyone against Atlanta you can make a case for. Chuma Okeke, I don't absolutely hate him at 4-2, but like the more I looked at it, I was like, I feel dumb playing him when I'm talking poorly about these other options. So I'm doing my best to stay away from those guys and maybe try to get a little bit more balanced with some of my constructions today so I can avoid those type of plays. So not excited there. One guy to talk about on Orlando that does fit that balanced construction is Goga Bitadze, right? Goga has a pretty good spot right here against Atlanta. We like to attack Atlanta with big men. They like to play with a traditional big man. It's a pretty good spot for someone like Goga. And I mean, I think you could make the case that like Mo Wagner can produce pretty well. Wendell Carter Jr. hasn't been as great, but like one of those guys could easily just in MME pop at their price, right? Just because I think they're going to play bigger this Hawks team like they always like to do. The Atlanta side of the ball, there's not a lot to like there. Just everyone's priced up, right, for things that we've talked about. And I should mention lastly, Banchero has a pretty nice price at 8.8K in a matchup against Atlanta. He's one of those studs that I definitely think can pop off in this spot. So I think if you're looking at studs, I think Banchero has to be in the conversation today.
Yeah, he was the guy I was going to mention. And I do think, if we don't get news, if the Boston guys play and, the Toronto value doesn't pop, and it does look like Ingles and Jonathan Isaac are holding, what I consider to be pretty crazy high ownership. Playing a guy like Banchero, I do think makes even more sense, right? Because people aren't really going to want to play him with Isaac, with Ingles in a big Banchero game. Probably to some extent limits the production, I think, of Ingles and Jonathan Isaac coming off the bench. So
let me say one last thing, just because I'm trying to explain. Like again, I think these projection systems sometimes miss like we look at these questionable punt value type plays and we're like, what? I actually, and most times I'm very critical of it, but not today. And let me give one of the reasons why. We're so used to Franz Wagner. So the rotation that the Magic have had is really interesting. One of Paulo or Franz is on the court at all time when both are healthy. And they basically built this team around those two guys. And you could go throughout the whole season. You could look at all the different rotations. Now what happens when Paulo is off the court, and we have, again, only three game sample, but then it's Joe Ingles and then Jonathan Isaac that have come in. Joe Ingles has averaged a 24% usage rate. Now, that was not the case when Franz Wagner was also sharing the court with them. So I do think the projection systems got it right with specifically Joe Ingles. So, and I thought that was usually I'm very critical of those type of plays, but I do think it's justified in this spot.
All right, putting Joe Ingles in AP score as soon as we get off this show.
He's my play of the day. I'm just, it's hurtful. I mean, Mangone wants to like the front court rotation is way dirtier than their wings, because like I hate what the Magic do with Goga and like Wendell Carter Jr. He's back now, and then they got Mo Wagner. They just split up the rotation between those three guys. The Magic are a disaster, but they are winning games, and that's what matters for them. So they're a disaster for DFS, though.
All right. I do side with you, AP. I do like Ingles over Jonathan Isaac. I will be hoping, though, to avoid both of them in the end. Let's continue.
I hear you with that.
Yeah.
These value plays, you know what they sound like, DC? They sound like a fixer-upper. That's what they sound like. Yeah, they sound like a fixer-upper, and I don't want any part of that. I want to buy you a nice home, DC, that you don't have to fix up or anything like that. One that you can just walk in and build your home out of. So there you go.
I appreciate that, because believe it or not, I'm not the handiest fella in the world. Next game on the slate, Milwaukee and the Cleveland Cavaliers. This one should be a fun one. I think the best actual basketball game that we've talked about so far. Milwaukee favored by 3.5 in Cleveland, 237 total. Looks like Milwaukee should be essentially fully healthy for this one, but there is injury news on Cleveland. Of course, they remain without Darius Garland and Ty Jerome, two of their guards. Darius Garland, obviously the starting point guard. And then Karis LeVert is questionable, also obviously without Evan Mobley, who has been out a long time now. We've seen Jared Allen. I feel like he doesn't get enough fanfare for what he's done in the last 2-3 weeks. AP I mean, every night, 40, 50 fantasy points from Jared Allen remains, I think, fairly priced. And Donovan Mitchell, especially if Karis LeVert misses, I think is a smash play. We love going up against those Milwaukee guards. And then also if LeVert misses, I think Craig Porter Jr. Becomes an interesting play. He's been one of the more reliable kind of chalk value plays when he's gotten an opportunity. I think he's got some real game. So I'm certainly looking at that Karis LeVert news carefully, hoping to get some value out of Cleveland instead of Orlando myself. But talk to us. Good game here between Milwaukee and Cleveland, AP.
Yeah, this is a game that we should all have a ton of interest in. One I spent a lot of time just like looking at, because I just think it's so interesting, and I'm trying to do better when I'm constructing my lineups and building my core. Really trying to stick to these guys that I just think are in such a great spot and check multiple boxes. And I think that's Donovan Mitchell tonight. That Paris game, I don't like. Hopefully, people are watching that. It was incredible, like what he did. He was all over the court, and his usage rate was insane. I think it was like the highest it's ever been, 46% true offensive usage rate. His overall touches have gone up somehow. I mean, this guy, and now the matchup is absolutely incredible. So these two teams just played not too long ago, and it was in Cleveland, and the Bucks got the win, 119-111. And but it was the Cavs side that smashed. Dame with Donovan Mitchell with a 61 piece, Jared Allen 59 piece. I mean, he put up a monster number. And they're going to need to today also. Like, these guys are full, like Max Strus also very, very much in play. I love the fact that K-Falix boy Max Strus is coming off a 1-for-8 shooting game. You do not see that from a guy like him. This is a really, really good shooter. He's actually struggled now 3 games in a row. So if there was ever a time for him to get it right, it would be tonight against the Bucks team. I think they're going to be very hungry for a win over this Milwaukee team that just beat them on their own court. And then, yeah, if Karis LeVert's out, I just think that we get an even tighter rotation, but it makes me like Max Strus even more. Dean Wade last game, I know K-Falix wants some money with them, but man, I feel like that just seems like an optimal ceiling type of performance from Dean Wade. Historically very low usage. You need him to rack up some steals. I mean, he's not a bad defender, but this matchup today is just a very, very tough one. Obviously, trying to defend Giannis, and so yeah, I'm not going to be playing Mr. Dean Wade and chasing that. But I love the Cavs side of this game, mainly Donovan Mitchell. I think he's a core building block stud, first guy into your lineup that you can start to build around. Now, the Bucks side is far more difficult. I think you could fade it and move on. The one interesting note is we've seen Dame's touches and usage slightly tick up over the last few games, and he had that game winner last time. So I had to mention it. Glock and I were talking about it in Discord. I don't think a lot of people were watching that game. It was a sick winner. I retweeted it out. And Dame, he's kind of a guy, a momentum type of player. With that win, that buzzer beater win in overtime, I could see him kind of going on one of those Dame time type of runs. And I believe it was his first time as a Buck doing his little Dame time, that he does with the watch. So I would not be surprised if Damian Lillard went on a little run right here.
All right. Makes a lot of sense there. I'm with you on the Donovan Mitchell call. I think especially if LeVert is out, Mitchell is just going to absolutely smash in this spot. I like him either way, but if LeVert is out, Mitchell will be in my main lineups tonight. Mangone, let's go to you for Milwaukee and Cleveland.
Yeah, Milwaukee, Cleveland, definitely going to be a game that I think you have some interest in. We have some pricey options, but I think Donovan Mitchell is a good play at 9.6. He's someone I'd look at. It does feel like Damian Lillard's price feels cheap in this matchup. Both these guards don't play a lot of defense between Dame and Mitchell, so I assume they're both going to go off against each other. We just got a lot of news in the Celtics game. We got Derek White out, Porzingis out, and Drew Holiday available. So a big piece of news that maybe we could touch back on at the end. But, yeah, it's going to be some Peyton Pritchard in our lives for sure today. But, yeah, I think Jared Allen, I know you talked about him, DC, at 8-1. he's definitely been solid. I don't think I will get there on this slate, but I get it. I think Brook Lopez at 6-1 again just has upside at the price. Last time in this matchup, he got 37. I made him my play of the day, and he did pretty well. So can't complain about that. I think it's a good spot for Brook Lopez here in this spot. Cleveland, obviously, LeVert is a big piece of news. If LeVert is out, that will shake some stuff up. That could open up some more opportunity for someone like Max Struss. We'd have to consider him a little bit. And don't fall for like a Dean Wade or an Isaac Okoro. We already just got good value with the Celtics. So I do think we don't have to worry about those guys. Oh, yeah.
Time, baby. It's Dame time.
Yeah, someone just
right
said.
Right on cue.
Yeah, Giannis is out. So that's why you're pointing to the watch. Okay, yeah, Dame's going to obviously be a really good play. Chris Middleton, let's see what his price is. He is 7-6. I'll say this. It does feel expensive for Chris Middleton, but the minutes are really good, and they've been good for the past month. I think Chris Middleton is still a good play. Lopez isn't bad. Bobby Portis has been the interesting guy that hasn't really like performed that well this season, and the minutes haven't been good. I definitely want to go back and look when I get off the show.
He's good now. He had that one game that you need, because I'm with you, because like I talked so much shit about him, and I think it was that day that I talked crap about him, that he absolutely went off. And ever since then, he has been very good in that backup role. I would expect him to smash tonight. So
yeah, I think Portis took that personally. You were shitting on him every goddamn show, AP. You're like, yeah, Portis is so bad.
He's been so bad.
He's been good. I
watched it closely, and he's owned me the last 3 games, 3-4 games now. He's been playing really good. So.
So clearly the Bucks are going to be a great play here for us, and then the Celtics. So we've, hey, AP, Joe Ingles is all yours today. No one's playing Joe Ingles. He's all yours. You got him.
That's what you got to love about those early, projections on guys, because it always changes. But like, if you're multi-entry, just don't forget about it, though. It could become a spot though where it just doesn't even make any sense anymore. But who knows? Actually, you know who I would play him over, like always? Pat Con. There you go. Screw Pat Con.
Cue up the Pat Con 40 burger tonight. Milwaukee becomes really interesting here. I mean, Dame, Brook Lopez, Portis, Middleton, right? I think they're all pretty good plays at this point. And then if LeVert misses, potential. I like me a good game stack, and Milwaukee Cleveland could certainly be that especially if LeVert misses as well.
I think tonight is the night to run it. I'm just telling you, just going back. I made myself a sticky. Glock's going to laugh if he's watching this, just because we're talking about it. We're like, Dame does this all the time. And I seriously think like everyone's going to play the Middletons and now definitely the Bobby Portis. Don't forget about Dame. The price, it's too cheap. And then actually maybe the play is actually on the other side of this game in Donovan Mitchell. Maybe it's people forget about that side of it. So this is becoming a premier game to stack tonight for sure.
Yeah, this game will have no defense played for sure. I think you're going to see a lot of scoring.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. You take Giannis out, and should be a really fun game between Milwaukee and Cleveland. We'll visit the Boston news at the end of the show. We do have 3 more games to talk about, so we'll do those 3. We'll go back to Boston, and then if you guys get the likes up, big crowd watching today, the like count is hurtful. Please get it up to 150, and we'll do the plays of the day. I think we'll have some good ones at the end of the show. Before that, though, let's do these final 3 games. One more game in the 7:30 Eastern time window. It is Houston and the New York Knicks. Jalen Brunson, who's missed the last 2 games, officially questionable in this game, but I do think he is very likely to return. I'm operating under the assumption that he'll be back in there. The other player questionable for the Knicks is Josh Hart, and Tari Eason remains out for Houston. Pretty low total in this one. I think the lowest on the slate, actually, 220.5. Knicks are favored by 6.5. Let's go to you, AP, Houston and New York. Not a game I personally love. What do you see here between the Knicks and the Rockets?
Yeah, I have it could change with this new news that we got, but I had a core play tag on Jalen Green. A lot of it has to do with his price tag, and when he's out there, like Fred VanVleet he's not putting this team on his back and shooting 25 times. Like we saw some of that in Toronto, but really he's out there. He's like a game manager, and he's deferring to Jalen Green. And when Jalen Green gets hot, he has the ability to put up a really nice score. And at 5,800, it just seems way too cheap. I think I might hold my ground with that play. Like if you just go and look, like if you're box score looking, like, and I'm not talking just box scores, and it's not like he's had tougher matchups too. Like the one spot against the Pistons, that they actually are, Jaden Ivey, a very good defender, even in that individual tough matchup, Jalen Green went off for what, like 40, 44? Struggled against Philly, but still put up a 30. I mean, at 5'8", if you're getting 30, I don't think you're too upset. But just look at the rotation in these games that stay close. 39 minutes. If you're getting 39 minutes from Jalen Green, it seems like a lock. So again, we need the game to stay close. I think the Rockets are able to do that against this Knicks team, especially if Jalen Brunson misses. I kind of think Brunson plays, though. Şengün, 7'9". I think he's very intriguing. Jabari Smith at 6K. I think he's a little underpriced, but this matchup is a little bit tougher. So really, it's Jalen Green on the Rockets side. And then the Knicks, it's very tough to play them now with the assumption that Jalen Brunson plays, which I think he does tonight. But again, if he doesn't, then obviously Miles McBride would become in play. But Miles McBride now is 5'3". Like I don't think he's like he'd probably become a pretty good play. 38 minutes, 36 minutes. They just shove him right into that Jalen Brunson role from a rotation standpoint. But if Brunson's out, then yeah, the Knicks become more intriguing. Julius Randle obviously in play, OG, Dante, and Miles McBride. So really, this game kind of depends. But if the news holds like I think it does, really it's Jalen Green for me.
Yeah, obviously a ton depends on that Jalen Brunson news. I like the Jalen Green call. Always good to own Phallic with that one. Mangone, what do you got for us, Knicks and Rockets?
Yeah, I feel pretty similar with you guys on this one. Like, I'm not going to have too much exposure. And speaking of owning Phallic, Amen Thompson the other day had 32 DK points. So there you go. He also had 19 the slate before. It's not an Amen Thompson slate, but yeah, I just want to call out owning Phallic. So here we go. But Jalen Brunson, I'm assuming he's in like you guys. I'm in a similar camp. I just think he's probably in. If Josh Hart's out, yes, that can open up some opportunity for some of these other options, but not that interested in the Knicks. Ant-Man is in. We should mention that. So obviously we're not going to get news with that, but we got some really good news already. The Houston side of the ball has some pretty good plays in the mid-tier. Two specifically, I agree, 5.8K, Jalen Green, definitely not a bad play. I think he is upside at this price, and I think he's in play. And then I don't mind Jabari Smith. At his price tag of 6K, I think there's just upside at the price, and I don't want to ignore, but that's really it for this one. I don't want to go too heavy with the Houston and the Knicks.
Yeah, me neither. Hopefully won't end up on too much of that game myself outside of the Jalen Green call. That's assuming, of course, Jalen Brunson does play, but I feel pretty good that he's going to be in there tonight. Last two games on the slate, we go to an 8 p.m. Eastern time window, just one game here. It is Charlotte and New Orleans, another game with blowout potential. New Orleans hosting this one. They are 12-point favorites. Total sitting right around 230. Obviously, the Charlotte Hornets got LaMelo Ball back recently. He's played, 27 in 30 minutes? And kind of back to his usual role. Actually put up a lot of fantasy points in both those games. I guess you could make a case for him at 9,100. I think he's the guy that kind of has to go off for Charlotte to have a chance. He should be, I think, up to close to his normal minutes in this one. Charlotte, questionable are McGowan, Miller, Frank Ntilikina, and then Gordon Hayward and Mark Williams still out. So they are still somewhat shorthanded. New Orleans, on the other hand, should be a full go in this one. Another game, AP, that I think is kind of ugly from a DFS perspective, but what do you see between the Pelicans and the Hornets here?
Yeah, I have this game as kind of one to fade. Any other matchup, LaMelo Ball, I'm kind of considering them, and a different slate. I like Dame. I like Donovan Mitchell over him in that same price range. And this matchup's just tough against the Pelicans with they can do so much. This is another team that's just so good defensively with Herb Jones in there. I still have the Wolves from a defensive standpoint as the best out there, toughest one to target, one I like to avoid. But the Pelicans close behind them with Herb Jones. So, but again, LaMelo Ball, what he's doing is, he makes the Hornets far more fun to watch. Yeah. Better from if LaMelo was out, this total would be at least 4 or 5 points lower. It seems like. I mean, it's not going to be that fast, or it wouldn't be that fast of a pace of a game if LaMelo was out. So with him in though, I agree with you. Large field tournaments, you could make the case to play him just because the usage is insane. 24 shot attempts against Miami. I mean, absolutely ridiculous. 36% usage rate, 40% that first game back. I mean, yeah, he could blow up. I don't see in this matchup on the Pelicans side. So the Hornets a full fade for me. I have Zion as a tournament play. I like it less now with Bobby Portis and some of this other value kind of emerging or mid-tier-ish type of plays. So I'll probably lower Zion a little bit, but again, at 7-6, it's more of in the matchup. I think he's somewhat intriguing, but I'll probably end up full fading this game.
Makes sense to me. I'm probably not going to end up with much of this game, if any, either Mangone, LaMelo Ball, projecting at I think 1 or 2% owned, the one guy I'm looking at. What about you? What do you see Pelicans and Hornets?
Yeah, I see nothing I like in this game, DC. Absolutely nothing. Listen, if you play anyone from this game, your lineups will be foreclosed today. You'll be shut down. It's over. So I'm out. No chance I am playing guys from this game.
We got to get you out of that suit next show. I don't know how many more real estate puns I can handle, Mangone. So are you on the show tomorrow? I think it's me, you, and Bryce. Or maybe it's me.
I'm not until I'm on. I don't know if we're doing an up to lock show for NFL, but that is premium. I don't know if I'll be dressing up for premium. We'll see.
You get Gary tomorrow. Gary is filling in for me. I'll be driving out to Denver, and I guarantee you, Gary's not going to be wearing a suit. That's my one guarantee. I can positively say.
Maybe we get some political takes from Gary on the show instead of a suit. We'll go
Real
on
question is
I think Gary. Hopefully Gary's done with the political takes, but we'll see.
I saw him fire a couple on the Twitter machine the other day. Always good to see from Mr. Gary. It'll be fun to do the show.
Gotta love it
with him tomorrow. Last game on the slate: Dallas and the LA Lakers. This one at 8:30 Eastern time. Lakers favored by 4. Really big total in this one, 243. Dante Exum, Josh Green are out for Dallas. Luka Doncic, who's missed the last couple, is questionable to play in this one. LeBron James also questionable for the Lakers. I would expect him to be in there. And then Cam Reddish is out for the Lakers as well. So obviously big news in this one on the last game of the slate with Luka. We've seen Kyrie go off for the most part when Luka has sat 5 big games in a row for Kyrie Irving. I think he would do it again if Luka does sit. So how are you approaching that news, IP? Are you reserving spots, saving a spot for Kyrie? What are you doing with Luka and this game? Because with the Warriors and Jazz game postponed, nowhere to pivot if Luka does play and you want to get off of a play like Kyrie Irving. So kind of an interesting spot if we don't get this news before the other games lock. We'll start with UAP, Dallas Lakers. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, Kyrie against LeBron. It would be intriguing if Luka wasn't in there. However, if Luka plays, it becomes far easier because we can avoid that situation and we can go to the much better projected spot in Cavs Bucks, which is likely what I'm doing. But again, it's definitely worth the discussion. Luka is, it's tough to play. I think he plays tonight. 3 games off. I kind of think it's a little bit, injury management type of a situation. I believe this game has to be on TV. I if it's not on TV, I would be surprised. Luka versus LeBron. Someone in chat probably knows. When doing my research today, I did not look to see what games were nationally televised. But I would imagine that this one would be. I think Luka plays
is on ABC. The other nationally televised game is Bucks Cleveland, just for what it's worth.
Oh, that sets up perfectly. Perfectly to stack that first game up. Maybe grab a piece or two from here. The one thing that I think is interesting is D'Lo is now back in the starting lineup. Lakers running a pretty tight rotation with D'Lo, Reeves. I think their price tags are interesting. D'Angelo Russell, 6K, Austin Reeves, 6,500. It's been a while since, we've been able to talk about these guys because D'Lo was coming off the bench. And for some reason, DraftKings was pricing Austin Reeves at like 8,200. I mean, back in December, Austin Reeves was 8,200 against the Wolves and OKC. So, why would we ever talk about Austin Reeves, an $8,200 Austin Reeves? And that was one thing that I know, Wiley, Bobby Hare on that committee with DraftKings that they really brought up from a pricing standpoint. And I think it makes the slates far more interesting because Austin Reeves is 6,500 in his current rotation. And in this matchup, when Luka and Kyrie are both playing, what happens is they become better and more efficient offensively, but also worse defensively, which is what we want when, one, you're targeting overs, and two, when you're playing DFS. And we would want to target them with D'Lo and Austin Reeves. So I think both are fine plays. No one's going to play Austin Reeves, too, on the slate. I think he's somewhat intriguing. Anthony Davis, again, now with Giannis out, if you're looking for a stud on this slate, he would become my preferred stud at 10K. Love this spot here against the Mavs. And if Luka plays, it's tough to play Luka or Kyrie or anyone on the Mavericks side. I would probably be under on them. But I do think a few of these Lakers are somewhat intriguing tonight.
Absolutely. That's AP's take on Lakers and Dallas. Let's go to you, Mangone. What do you got for us here?
Yeah, obviously huge piece of news. And I assume we get this news, at least we'll get the update, right? Right at the lock time. And good news, obviously there's the what's it called? The Cleveland game that's going to be a little bit later. So that's obviously nice. And there's only one game that locks, right? That Minnesota-Detroit game at 7 o'clock. And then there's all those games that lock at 7:30. So, hey, we'll at least get an update on that situation, which I do think is important. Of course, if Luka somehow misses, you're going to like Kyrie Irving, going to be a boost for him. Not bad spot for Tim Hardaway Jr. and some of these other options here. And then I think on the Lakers side, I'm just assuming LeBron James is playing. He just always plays in these spots. Same with Anthony Davis. And then if you look at all the other options, we were struggling for value before, and I think Taurean Prince wasn't the worst play that you could consider. The minutes have been there. It's one of those plays that I think you were considering before. I'm probably not considering now. And then I think D'Angelo Russell, like I talked about, if you want to play more of that balanced mid-tier build, I think D'Angelo Russell at 6K, it's not a bad play right there. Same with Austin Reeves at 6'5". Those two guys are definitely in the conversation there for me, so I do not mind them. And then, of course, I should mention Christian Wood. Yes, the minutes are gross, but hey, at 4.2, if you are struggling for value, which I don't think we're struggling as much anymore, I don't think he's the craziest play. The problem is he just needs minutes, right? I mean, if he does somehow run into a lot of minutes, that's great. But the problem that you have with someone like Christian Wood today, and why you probably don't want to do it, is, again, we have better value, for one. And two, yes, it's a Christian Wood revenge game, but does Christian Wood probably play in these lineups, right? It just doesn't seem like a spot where the Dallas Mavericks are ever going to go big, right? It doesn't make a lot of sense for someone like Christian Wood. So, sure, it looks good on paper and makes sense, but I don't think it makes as much sense here, especially with all the good value that we've got.
Hey, real quick on Mangone, just to add on to what Mangone said, with Rui Hachimura back too, I think it adds in a lot more risk to Christian Wood. Just look at his rotation last game, and it wasn't in foul trouble. He played a lot in the second quarter, but again, he played I think 4 minutes in the second half. So I think it's a really, really, really risky play on this slate.
The Lakers with Reddish out, their bench situation is kind of interesting, right? The guys coming off the bench are Hachimura, Vanderbilt, Christian Wood, all kind of big men, and then Max Christie, who's kind of a nothing. So I think, Reeves and Russell potentially in for big minutes on a nightly basis as long as Reddish is out. I do think those guys are pretty interesting, and I do think saving a spot for Kyrie with a plan to maybe come off of him with a 2v2 or something late, I do think makes some sense. Haven't looked at it exactly, but it might be something I'll be looking to do with one of my teams because Kyrie Irving, I mean, I think he's going to go pretty low owned. People are going to assume Luka plays, and quite a spot for him if Luka misses. And listen, Luka's missed 3 games in a row. I kind of default to missing another game when a player's missed several games in a row, just as my default assumption when they're listed questionable once again. Let's go back to Boston really quickly. Obviously, big news there. Then we'll do plays of the day. We'll get on out of here after that. We do have Up to Lock coming up for members. I think, do we have a new promo code, AP? I think New Year will still work for 15% off weekly or monthly payment. But yeah, we do have Up to Lock coming up for members after our show. Let's go back to Boston quickly. Obviously, we got the news. Porzingis, Derek White out. Big news for Boston. We'll see a bigger role, more minutes, I think, for Al Horford and Peyton Pritchard, the two, I think, kind of primary benefactors here. But obviously, everybody, I think, kind of gets a bump on Celtics that's getting minutes, including Tatum, Brown, Hauser. Talk to me, AP. What are you doing with Boston with this Drew Holiday or Derek White and Kristaps Porzingis news?
Yeah, I mean, it makes this game a lot more interesting, especially like the studs, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, obviously Drew Holiday, Peyton Pritchard. I mean, in a matchup against the Spurs, it's easy to like overlook the studs, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum in this game just to assume a blowout. But I would be cautious to do that. I think at the end of the night, you're going to see multiple flame emojis as we talk about on the Boston side. And so it's kind of figuring out who there to target. I think Peyton Pritchard obviously has a much bigger role. Sam Hauser, he's more scoring dependent, but again, now you could consider a play like that. Now it's very, very difficult, or most likely going to be very difficult to play like the Joe Ingles and Jonathan Isaac. So what once was 40-50% projected ownership is now going to be
now it all went to Sam Hauser.
Now, if it all goes to Sam Hauser, I'm going to pass on Sam Hauser. But again, it's a matchup against the Spurs. I only like the toughest part of this matchup is, whoever has to face Wembanyama because he's so long, he can block shots, steals, all that stuff. So again, I think the best matchup is probably Drew Holiday. Now he's going to be chalk, rightfully so, 6,100, coming off a really good game. Drew Holiday, a very, very core play type of piece. 6,100 is way too cheap. So this game becomes far more intriguing. I mean, it does become very clear. Like, I think you fade the 7 Eastern game, give yourself 30 more minutes, just full fade that game. Don't tilt. If Karl Anthony Towns puts up like 44 or whatever, there's going to be other opportunity. Just be patient, wait for these starting lineups. They're going to be very telling because we have some, very, very good spots here. The Celtics, one of them. Obviously, Bucks, Cavs that we talked about. The Raptors as well. So, again, I think you fade the 7 Eastern game, and I'm even going to fade the Hornets, Pelicans game. I'm going to X them out. They're not even – none of those players are going to be, in my lineups, and I'm going to focus on the 7:30 window and then maybe looking at a few 8:30 pieces. But I don't even know if I'll get to that game just because there's so many good plays in this 7:30 window.
You always make me laugh, AP, when you tell people, don't tilt, just relax. No one's listening to you. Everyone's tilting.
Everyone's going to tilt, do what they want.
Yeah. Mangone, your quick thoughts on Boston here.
Yeah, what AP just told me was go when I get off the show, go to Chipotle, right? Go grab myself some food beforehand.
Yes.
Don't worry about these next games coming up.
Hopefully they have steak for you, Mangone.
What?
Hopefully they have steak for you this time.
Yeah, let's hope, man. That was brutal. AP,
if you show up in a suit, they'll give you the steak.
Yeah, AP, I don't know if you saw my tweet the other day. I went there and I went to get Chipotle and they said no steak. I was like, well, why can't I just wait? They're like, nope, you can't wait. And I was like, I see it cooking.
Why not get the barbacoa or the carnitas? Those are my two go-tos. So then I go to steak.
My go-to is always the steak, but I went with chicken. I said, okay, I guess this is my chance to have chicken instead of steak. So we went with the steak. We went with the chicken. But talking about this Celtics game, yeah, you're going to have to like some plays here, right? It's obviously going to be a good spot for our guy Peyton Pritchard, who we talked about. I do think it's a good spot for someone like Drew Holiday now, Jaylen Brown and Tatum. They all just get bumps, right? But I really do think it's going to help Peyton Pritchard a lot. So I'm very interested in him as a value here on the Boston Celtics.
All right, we did just get news. Josh Hart, Jalen Brunson, both probable to play for the Knicks. Looks like that Houston and New York game, not great, especially on the Knicks side of the ball. And a lot of news came in during the show, but we are ready now for our plays of the day. Let's go to you first, AP. Gentleman's play of the day.
Yeah, so initially I wasn't going to go to him because I thought he was going to be somewhat popular, but just looking at the guard options that we have, I think ownership has to spread out, and especially when we're talking about a stud. And I'm going right back to this matchup against the Bucks. I'm going Donovan Mitchell as my play of the day. I feel like he's going to be a little bit lower than what he should be tonight, given all the other plays at that position.
Donovan Mitchell, the gentleman's play of the day. Let's go for the foreclosed house play of the day, Mr. Mangone.
Yeah, I had Jalen Williams yesterday. Jalen Williams wasn't bad. He was fine, but I'm going to another forward, right? Another forward here that I think is a pretty good play. We talked about him earlier, DC. I think this rotation is going to be tighter with some of these plays. Give me RJ Barrett in that 6K range.
Ooh.
He will be my play of the day.
He's heating up. He's heating up.
You stole mine. I think that's the second show in a row that you stole my play of the day. I'm going to stick with that same game. We talked about Toronto. I think they're going to have to lean on not the big men, but the good players that they have left, the guys that play the 1 through 4. You chose Barrett. I'll go to the other guy they acquired in that trade, Mr. Emmanuel Quickly. I think he's going to have a bigger role in this game with no Pascal Siakam. I think he's going to play big minutes, and maybe we'll see some Quickly and Quickly to Barrett. Maybe they can get some assists going back and forth to each other. I got to get one of those soundboards. It looks like too much fun. I'll probably overly abuse it though. We do have the Up to Lock show, of course, coming up for members. Get on over, sign up using promo code New Year if you haven't yet. That'll do it for this show. We will be back same time, same place tomorrow. We appreciate you guys watching as always. For senior real estate mogul Travis Mangone, the gentleman AP, I'm the basement dweller DC, and we'll check you next time.